It has been almost 2 years to the day since the release of Dark Deity, a game that came out in 2021, launching into the turn-based strategy genre, of course, my favorite genre of all time. And while an indie title, clearly drawing massive amounts of inspiration from some OG classic Fire Emblem titles, the GBA era specifically. And of course, if you know me, Fire Emblem, my favorite series of all time, I was absolutely extremely interested in seeing an indie title tackle that style of turn-based strategy RPG, and they tackled it with aplomb, let me tell you. The character art, the actual pixel animations for all the various classes, all the unique animations for different spells, the different scenario objectives that you could encounter, fun music, good voice acting, like a lot of really high quality stuff for what was the studio's first ever entry, not just into the genre, but in gaming, period. Super impressive title. It launched, unfortunately, with some nasty bugs and issues like that, but the community, myself included, helped them get those sorted out in fairly short order, and what was left was a really solid, if simple, entry into the genre. A nice throwback to simpler times in Fire Emblem history before we had our more full-blown engages and three houses and sweeping storylines and incredibly deep character building. Like, just a fun strategy romp. And I'm super excited that just a couple days ago on Twitter they announced Dark Deity 2 is happening, and from the trailer that they have, it looks like it's coming along extremely, extremely well. I just wanted to take the chance to talk about it for a second because, like, I adore this game. It's one of the only games that I ever left an in-depth review for on Steam. I've played it a ton. I still go back and play it fairly regularly because it's just nice, you know? As much as I love where Fire Emblem has gone in its latest iterations, like I said, that more in-depth, fully fledged modern game style with all the various ways that you can build characters and much more involved storylines with cutscenes and voice dialogue and all that type of stuff. I'm a child of the GBA era of Fire Emblem. I love that era of Fire Emblem. Being able to just load it up and say, I'm going to plow through 9 missions today and just use some different characters I haven't used before. Maybe if there's split promotion, try a different class on them that I haven't used in a while. Just have fun with it. Quickly read through dialogue, skip it if I feel like it, read a few simple supports, and just revel in that approachableness of it all. It's not as daunting of a task as starting a playthrough of 3 houses, you know? And that's what Dark Deity does. And it's nice to have that in an era when Fire Emblem isn't doing that anymore. And I'm so excited that we're going to have another entry coming at some point. There's no release date yet, just the initial reveal trailer, but you can tell that Sword and Axe, the dev team, has learned so much from their initial outing with Dark Deity. Despite how good it was, it, you know, had its rough edges, of course, and it was, again, simple almost to a negative, according to some people. But if you compare, I mean, you can see I've got footage here of the original game versus their reveal trailer footage. They have embellished a lot. The graphics look even better than they already did. All the various menus and framing of everything is beautiful. We've got even more impressive pixel art and animations than we had originally, which to me was one of the selling points of Dark Deity 1. There's just a lot going on here, and I'm so excited to see what they're doing with it. One of the things that unfortunately was quite derided by people, not even necessarily unfairly, was Dark Deity's story. Again, simplicity was the name of the game for these guys, and for their first outing, I can't blame them. And it was a very simple, generic fantasy RPG story, really. Our main character and his friends could come right out of any of the first 8 entries in Fire Emblem history, really even 9 if you want to include Ike and the Grell Mercenaries. And while they're fun and they're relatable and there's some quite good character writing in there in the Bond conversations, the story itself is like, there's a bunch of artifacts of power. We need to get them before the bad guy gets them, takes over the world. That's pretty much it. And it serves its purpose, and it's nice to have something that just is a kind of tropey, simple story to just drive the plot along and revel in it. Just enjoy it. Like it's a classic from the 80s or 90s, right? But the devs themselves have even said that it's not the story that they wanted to write. The characters, especially the main character, not the character that they wanted to write. But they felt like they didn't want to get too lost in the weeds in making something more complex on their first outing. That means we should hopefully be seeing some big steps forward with the story and with the characters and how it's all portrayed in Dark Deity 2. And that's awesome. because I love the world that was being built in Dark Deity. You have all of these various kind of D&D-esque tropes, but applied to Fire Emblem. You have adepts, characters who are kind of sorcerers, if you're familiar with D&D. Magic comes to them naturally. It's in their blood. And they have this attunement with the elements that traditionally learned mages don't. It comes to them in a way that's natural but dangerous, and the elements can kind of react to that in a way that's positive or negative. And that's cool to see in a more Fire Emblem-esque setting. You've got characters who are your healers, your clerics, but they're classical D&D style clerics, heavy armor and maces, and they can frontline tank and they can heal, and it's really cool. And it's a refreshing setting. If I had to say, it was more like a Final Fantasy Tactics-esque setting, but applied to a Fire Emblem gameplay style, and that's awesome. I love that. I'm excited to see what all new classes and spells and everything there are, because just in the first game, there's a lot of really cool, interesting, unique classes. And the way you can build characters is really fun, because you start in a base class, one of, 4 or 5, 6, but then you can promote into 4 different options, and then you can promote again into a 3rd tier of any of the other 4 options. You're not locked in to anything, which is nice, because you carry your skills forward with you. Every class had 2 or 3 skills that you would gain when you promoted to it, and then when you promoted to the next tier, you kept whatever skills you had from the previously chosen class and applied it to your new class, along with the skills that it had. So you can actually do some interesting build crafting stuff by weaving between and going through some unorthodox build combinations and class combinations to make a unique character. So even though you had multiple characters of each base class type, they could all play very differently. And that was before you even factored in things like personal skills or the aspects, the artifacts of power that you had to go around collecting, but that, in a little bit of a twist, weren't just story elements. They were actual functional things that you got that functionally completely could alter the way a character would work. Like up to and including things like swapping attack and speed values, like a 100% swap, dramatically changing the way a character would play, or massively boosting magic resistance so you could turn a character into your magic tank even if they normally wouldn't be that, and all that type of stuff is really unique, really cool, and I can't wait to see what new stuff they'll have added to Dark Deity 2. Even just from the trailer, we can see that there's a lot more utility options in terms of class abilities, because each class had its own thing that you could do. Thief-based classes could disarm an enemy, make it so they wouldn't get bonuses from their weapon for a turn, so attacking them would be a lot safer. You had other characters, such as your adepts, who could actually chain a unit in place, keep them from moving, force them to fight one-on-one and not navigate around. Your mages could warp ally units a slight distance across the battlefield, kind of in a sort of swap, reposition type way, if you're familiar with Fire Emblem and those abilities. And I can only imagine some of the cool stuff that they will have now. One of the abilities that was on display seemed to be some sort of blockade freeze ability that reminded me of the obstruct staff from Fire Emblem Engage, actually. So if you could put up barricades or create other obstacles, damaging zones, things like that, and that was just an inherent ability of a particular type of class on top of all their skills, that sounds awesome to me. I love the sound of that. And with all of the new experience and skill that the developers have, I can only imagine some of the cool stuff that they're going to bring to the table. So hopefully what we're going to see is a very refined product. The same level of character art and animation and mission design, but with those other areas that felt like they were a little lacking, brought up to the same level. More types of units and classes, and a more fully fledged, more deeply written story with more deeply written characters, and hopefully a whole bunch of new aspects or a similar system that allowed you to get into a level of build crafting that you might not otherwise see in an indie title of this size. So I absolutely can't wait. I'm going to be watching with bated breath for any more details, characters, classes, a release date maybe, any potential demos, anything like that. I'm going to be all over it, and hope that you guys will enjoy it as well. If you haven't already checked out Dark Deity, I highly recommend that you do. It's on Steam and Switch at the very least, as far as I know. If it's on other platforms as well, I'm just not aware. My apologies. But I highly recommend it. It's like typically 15, 20 bucks, I believe, on Steam, and I think it's a great purchase. I really, really do. I wouldn't get dissuaded by the people who had negative reviews when the game was glitchy when it first released. That's not the case anymore. And if you enjoy Fire Emblem, you enjoy some of the simpler entries from the past, or you are maybe a new convert to the series and have only played some of the more in-depth titles, Dark Deity might be a good way to see if you would like that older style, because it's definitely emblematic of it. But that said, I'm probably going to wrap this one up here. Sword and Axe, if you want to hit me up for anything in the future, let me know, because I'm absolutely going to be playing the game on stream when it comes out. I can't wait to see more. But if you check it out, let me know. That said, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.